Are you sick of waking up with anxiety and regret after drinking? I get it. I was a weekend binge drinker, fooling myself into believing I was detoxing all week, only to retox every weekend and live completely outside of alignment with my values. As a former personal trainer who cared about health, that disconnect pushed me to finally make a change. I'm Maureen and this is Sober Fit Life, a podcast where we get real about alcohol, share powerful stories, and learn from wellness experts so you can thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. Let's get sober fit. Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI. Hey everybody, if you've ever felt stuck in the cycle of drinking but don't resonate with the traditional rock bottom recovery stories, this episode is for you. There is another way to approach alcohol, one that focuses on healing and nourishment rather than willpower. I am beyond thrilled today to welcome Jolene Park. She is a pioneer in the gray area drinking movement, and her TED Talk, viewed over 400,000 times, has changed the conversation around alcohol and well-being. As a functional nutritionist and health coach, she is revolutionizing how we heal the nervous system after stopping drinking with her NOURISH Method. Jolene is also one of my mentors, and being part of her master coaching group has been a game changer for me. I've gone through her gray area drinking coaching training and incorporate her NOURISH Method into my own coaching. Her insights on neurotransmitter health and emotional resilience are transforming lives, and I can't wait for you to hear her wisdom. So Jolene, welcome to Sober Fit Life.
Oh, what a sweet intro. Thank you. It's really good to be here. Thanks, Maureen.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. You've really just opened my eyes as to why it's so important to address physiology when we're helping someone change their habits, their lifestyle around drinking. And you introduced me to the term gray area drinking. I had heard it and seen it on Instagram, but I didn't really understand what it was. And I love when I first met you in the first training, you said, this is not a hashtag. This is actually a nutritional term. So I would love it if you would explain to people what is gray area drinking and how it came about, that term.
Well, let's start with what it is, and then we'll talk about more, the terms and language. And so what gray area drinking is it's actually a very clear black and white definition. And then there's, this whole gray area. But so what gray area drinking is not is for that segment of the population who are every now and again drinkers. And that has a very clear definition. It's not just an ambiguous, vague, anybody and everybody can be like, oh, I drink every now and again.
Right.
every now and again is defined as 2 or fewer, and fewer is the key word, 2 or fewer standard drinks in a 7-day period. So that's, 5 ounces of wine twice a week and no more. If it's 3 or more drinks, that starts to get into the gray area. And the reason it gets into the gray area is because there is no safe or healthy recommended intake level of alcohol, which has been established by the Lancet Medical Journal in 2018. And so there's all these terms and self-identified labels of casual drinker, moderate drinker, social drinker, addicted drinker, dependent drinker, emotionally hooked but not physically hooked. Like there's all these terms, but they're all ambiguous and they're all self-identified. And what I mean by that is we could put 5 people in a room who self-identify as social drinkers, and we're going to hear 5 very different stories. They're just there's a lot of fluidity. It's gray.
Yeah.
And the reason it's gray is because there is no safe or healthy recommended intake. And so people who drink two or fewer, and there are many people who drink two or fewer drinks out there.
Yeah.
And, they'll have a drink and then they don't drink again for weeks or a couple months, and then they'll have another drink. And there's a huge demographic that drinks like that.
Yeah.
That is not gray area drinking.
I like to call them unicorns.
Yes. So most people who drink are drinking in the gray area because they're drinking 3 or more drinks a week. And then again, those stories and those histories and those amounts and what that looks like, it's a long and it's a wide spectrum, but it's this gray area spectrum. And I didn't create that word, but I pioneered it, really brought it to the public stage with my TED Talk in 2017, because as a nutritionist, I came across the research that coined this term in 2010. And it was nutritional research that was looking at the American dietary guidelines, and from a disease prevention and from an optimal health prevention standpoint. They said, we're not looking at people in this other category where it's this end stage, need medical intervention to treat cirrhosis of the liver or seizures or prevent death because they've had so much to drink. So that's the other really defined category, those two extremes.
The other end of the spectrum.
Right. That's not gray area drinking, but there's certainly a demographic of people out there that need that medical intervention around their alcohol use. And this team of researchers with the dietary guidelines said, that's not who we're talking about. We're also not talking about every now and again drinkers, but we're talking about this gray area. That's where that term came from. Because when we're giving recommendations for caloric intake and optimal eating and, good food and good nutrition and nutrient profile, we can't ignore alcohol. It's part of the caloric intake. It's part of the nutrient intake. And when people are looking to prevent disease like cancer, like heart disease, dementia. And live a long, good quality life, healthy longevity, we can't ignore alcohol. And there's this gray area.
Right.
And so that's where the term came from. That's kind of the long explanation of what it is, what it isn't. But the bottom line is most people who drink alcohol drink in the gray area. Because there is no safe or healthy recommended intake level of alcohol.
And you weren't just doing this research as a functional nutritionist. You actually were looking into this for yourself because you started to examine your own drinking. And I know I felt very out of alignment with myself as a personal trainer. Here I am teaching people health and fitness and how to take care of themselves. And I'd be binge drinking on the weekends. And I do something called detoxing and, retoxing in my mind. And you also looked at that as a health provider, nutritionist. And that's kind of when you started the research?
Right. So I've been in the health and wellness industry for 25 years. I've had my own health and wellness company since 2001 and have taught corporate wellness classes for many years of this concept around, it's this comprehensive approach to health and nutrition and well-being. As a nutritionist, it's my foundation of my study and my education and my training as I train others. But it's not the only piece. So there's a lot of people who eat good food. They know how to eat well, and they also move their bodies well, and they know how to exercise. But just because we eat well and exercise doesn't mean we're healthy. There's a bigger picture that goes into that. There's other vital nutrients that are needed. And things with our relationships and our relaxation and our sleep and our spirituality, our emotional health, all of these pieces have vital nutrients in them just the way that food does. And so I was teaching this and, still love that, that just industry and more of kind of the integrative mind-body approach to things. And as I was teaching and working as a nutritionist, I was drinking like most women around us drink. And there was nothing about my drinking that stood out or looked problematic looking at it from the outside. I was drinking like all my girlfriends were, book clubs and girls' night out and going to, happy hours. But I knew that I was drinking too much.
Right.
And, I'd wake up the next morning and say to myself, "Oh, I was only going to go out and have one glass of wine. And then I had 2, 3 glasses. I finished the bottle. Like
Yeah.
that was not what I intended to do." And that was getting very easy to do and on a frequent basis. And that pattern of I'm just going to have one turned into more than one. And that's, it was too many. And so this is a characteristic
Yes.
of gray area drinking too, is that um, just because people are drinking more than the recommended amount doesn't mean they have a problem.
Right.
But gray area drinkers, this is where it becomes that self-identified, not self-identifying by what label you pick. I mean, that's fun and interesting for a minute. Different people, resonate and they call themselves a moderate drinker, casual drinker. I mean, that's all interesting for 5 seconds. But where our work as gray area drinkers coaching then really begins is for the people who self-identify saying, I'm drinking like most people around me, but it's too much for me.
Right.
And then that's where our work begins. So we're not plucking people off the street, pointing fingers, saying, you have a drinking problem, you have a
No.
drinking problem. There's enough of that internal knowing within a gray area drinker saying, this is a problem for me.
Yeah.
Even though my husband, my friends say you're worrying too much, or there's, you're not an alcoholic or anything. Like all of those things is often the feedback gray area drinkers will get.
They feel out of alignment with themselves, just
Right.
who they want to be. And I certainly felt that. And that in itself is very disconcerting. And that's the thing you need to look at as a person who might be saying, when you wake up, I did it again and I don't feel good about it. That is the person that we coach, that we like to coach. Yeah.
And that's then how we self-identify
Yeah.
as a gray area drinker, saying this is too much for me. Often externally, there's nothing that has been a negative consequence that has looked like a stereotypical kind of Hollywood movie rock bottom.
Yeah.
But we, in our own bones, in our gut, we know it's too much for us.
But that's also the challenging piece, because when you, as a gray area drinker, start to change your drinking, you have the people around you going, but you don't have a problem. You don't look like a drinker. You're not hitting rock bottom. And that always kind of holds people back. I know it held me back for years, that kind of feedback from other people. And that's about all I needed, was to someone to say, you don't have a problem. Because that wasn't it. It was that I was just not living the life I wanted to live.
Right.
Yeah. And so you've discovered this, and then you did a TED Talk. And I love how in your TED Talk, and I recommend everybody go watch it, you talk about the breakdown of neurotransmitters and really kind of why people are drinking. Maybe they're low in this neurotransmitter or that neurotransmitter. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So my work is 100% physiology
Mm-hmm.
based, because that's where the research is. And then conveniently it works really well. That's where my work and study has always been as a nutritionist in functional medicine, in kind of that precision 3.0 integrative longevity medicine. It's about the physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And again, conveniently, alcohol is a physical substance
It is.
that unfortunately dramatically alters our internal chemistry. And so the remedy with that then is to come at it with physical interventions first before the psychological interventions. So traditionally, it's been flipped. It's been more about the cognitive, more about the psychology, maybe character defects, maybe kind of that mental, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and have a positive attitude and look at what your belief is.
Yeah.
And we just know from the neuroscience that it's physiology. And so neurotransmitters is a foundational place to start. They're the neuro messengers, the chemical messengers within the brain. And alcohol wipes out all the neurotransmitters. It's a dirty drug. And it's why we reach to alcohol, because when our mood is low, when our sleep is off, when our anxiety is up, or we're feeling low and blue in a depression, that's all neurotransmitter symptomatology.
Yeah.
So serotonin is a neurotransmitter responsible for our happiness and feeling content and life is good and I don't need to overeat or oversleep, or I want to be around people. Like there's that happiness with adequate serotonin. With GABA, it's the relaxation neurotransmitter. Our mind can downshift and slow down, and we have that anti-anxiety sensation in our body. Dopamine is the motivation to get up and go, get off the couch, get out the door in the morning, produce, execute. And then the acetylcholine is about focus and attention and memory. And so when those neurotransmitters are low naturally, and they can be for all kinds of reasons,
Yeah.
because we're not sleeping well, because we're eating a lot of processed food, because we're really stressed or have gone through a recent trauma or adversity. Various things can deplete those neurotransmitters. And then the body starts looking outside of itself to regulate the depletion and the deficiency inside ourselves. So
And
it makes
alcohol is the easiest, fastest way to do that. I mean, there's no doubt about it, or we wouldn't do it.
It's incredibly accessible,
Yeah.
as we know, and it works initially. Like it's a very instant, and it gives that feeling of optimal neurotransmitter balance. So if our focus is off, if our anxiety is up, if our mood is down, if our sleep is off, all of those things temporarily, when we have a drink, it feels like they come into balance.
Yes.
But what really happens is it just knocks those neurotransmitters down even more. And then we want more alcohol to try to bring that balance up. And it's this vicious cycle of bringing neurotransmitters down further and further. So we, in my opinion, and the nutritional research is there as well, the neurobiology research is there, is working with the neurochemicals to bring some natural balance, which we can do naturally through food and movement and different exercises and different practices, so that we don't have to use outside chemical like alcohol to try to get that kind of pseudo neurotransmitter balance.
And the crazy thing is, most people say, well, I drink to relax, I drink to de-stress. And yet the very action of drinking over time depletes those very neurotransmitters that help us to relax naturally, and that's like the biggest thing to help people to understand. So we talk about central nervous system regulation. That's a big kind of buzzword in the coaching world right now. But I noticed at first, when I started talking to my clients about this, it was kind of like, well, what is that? Why is that important to my drinking? Why does my central nervous system matter? So like, if you were to describe it in a, lay person terms, like, why does it matter to regulate your central nervous system?
Well, basically, the nervous system, in a real kind of simplistic way to look at it, is it's our stress response. So when we feel activated over a conversation, or bad food that we ate, or a difficult environment, when anything activates our system, the system gets stressed. And if we have a fight with a loved one, it's that stress in the body, and that's the nervous system reacting. But the first place it starts is in the body, because we're an animal, where it's that animal brain, and the animal, in order to protect us, literally keep us alive, our body responds first in these micro nanoseconds. And it's that fight or flee response, because it's stress, protection. Do we need to fight this environment, this person, this situation, or do we need to flee? And that all happens on, it's called this neuroceptive, like our senses are sensing. If this needs to be done way before it's a cognitive, like I need to stand up out of this chair, lift my left leg, run out of the door, the body, and thank goodness it'll instinctively do that. If we're walking down the sidewalk together and a car starts to swerve towards us, our bodies are going to respond to that flee, fight response. So it's this, the body is responding, but often, and the body can respond to past thoughts or to past experiences that are not here currently, or worrying about future tripping, about the future. Or
Anxiety.
Something in the moment, but not, it just keeps looping and going over and over in the nervous system. So the nervous system stays in this heightened, activated state, which doesn't feel good. We can't always stay on the gas pedal. We have to let off and come onto the brake.
But our society is very much on the gas pedal all the time, with our phones and our multitasking and everything.
It makes sense of why then we're drawn to alcohol, because alcohol is a depressant. Alcohol is the brakes. And so many gray area drinkers, especially women, will say that they reach to alcohol to shut their mind off, to downshift. And that's that GABA. It's that the break when we're always on the gas. And again, either perceived or real time, the nervous system is on the gas. It's trying to flee, it's trying to fight, it's trying to protect. And the whole sensory system is lit up like a Christmas tree.
Right.
And I mean, again, there's like a rhythm to our organism that it needs to be an ebb and a flow. There's some stress, and then we come down from it, and then we peak with some stress and come down. And so if we haven't been taught how to do that, and the body hasn't had a learned response to where it feels safe that it can come out of that hyperactivated mode, we start then to reach externally something that's medicating, that is self-regulating in the system. So alcohol makes perfect sense.
Right.
But it's a physiological response first, and then a psychological response. So all of this happens in the body. Our pupils dilate,
fast.
our heart starts to race, our muscles clench. And again, staying in that long term doesn't feel good. So we want to come out of that. But all of that physiological response then gives the message up the spinal cord to the brain to have then an emotional response, to have a feeling, to have a behavior. But that psychology comes on board and happens after the physiology gets activated. So we have to work first with the physiology, then we can work with the mind and the psychology.
And that was so key for me in your master coaching group, to understand that it's the physiological response that happens first, and then the emotional. That was so key to understand that. And so you, knowing this in your research, you developed the NOURISH Method, your NOURISH Method, which you now teach other coaches to address the physiology, to downregulate the central nervous system without turning to alcohol. But like you said, unless people are taught how to do these things, it's not natural. And we're constantly being marketed to that, alcohol is the way to do that. And it's so easy, and it's what everybody's doing. And, so can you talk about your NOURISH Method?
Absolutely. And one other thing I want to say about this is that again, just to kind of really simplify like why the nervous system is so important. We see it, all of us have gone through this with alcohol. Clients will say, I know this stuff.
Right.
I know alcohol's a poison. I know it's not good for me. That's the psychology. That's the mind. But then they say, why can't I stick with it? And the why is because the physiological response is immediate. It feels good. It works. It's physiology first. And we're using alcohol for the first physiological effect. And then if it were about knowing, and if it were about the mind, we just stop drinking.
Right.
But it's not about the psychology. It's about the physiology. And so that's where I start. And my NOURISH Method, I can just quickly go through that acronym. So N is notice nature. O is observe your breath. U, unite with others. R, replenish with food. I, initiate movement. S, sit in stillness. And H, harness creativity. And these aspects are what I've worked with throughout my career. And whatever I'm, working with clients on, whether it's weight loss or anxiety or quitting drinking, or when we're working with a nutrition, kind of from a nutritional foundation, there are some keystone threads that run through the research that cover so many bases. And that's what then I pulled into the NOURISH acronym. And what I mean by covering so many bases, covering the neurotransmitters, regulating the blood sugar, regulating the adrenaline and the cortisol, regulating hormones, bringing the body out of that fight or flee response and bringing it back to a safety, kind of social engaged response. And so things show up over and over and over. There's all kinds of physiological, neurobiological mechanisms. And those top 7 things that show up is nature, what nature does to our physiology, utilizing our breath, community, other people, because of how our nervous systems co-regulate with each other. Food, huge. And, the supplements, the nutrients, the protein, food, with brain regulation, with mood, movement, and then a stillness practice, a spiritual practice, and a creative playtime, downtime. Now, each of those I can dig into and lift the hood, and there's all kinds of layers behind it. Because on the surface, it's like, oh yeah, I should eat my vegetables
Right.
and do something fun. But it's much deeper than that. Like when I say initiate movement, it's not just, go to a spin class. So there's other ways that I look at too of moving the nervous system to discharge emotion and stress. And things are like expressive writing. There's certain nervous system regulation techniques of like acupressure points on the body. And so it gets really nuanced and targeted beyond just kind of like, oh yeah, I should eat
Right. We kind of want to
vegetables.
get away from the I should, and this
Right.
is what you teach in the master coach training, is that, and you had all of us try these resources that you have in these 7 different categories so we could experience them and build our toolbox, our toolkit of what works for us, and then doing that with our clients as far as after we coach them and kind of figure out where maybe they're not doing things in these categories, we resource them and give them things to do. So that is so, I love that. It's such a thorough technique, and it helps people change because, like you're saying, if they don't address their physiology, they will just go back to drinking because, in my opinion, they're just kind of in willpower if they're not addressing their physiology. And we all know willpower is going to wear off. It's like a muscle. It'll get tired. It'll wear out. So I love your program, obviously.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So can you mentioned something earlier, and when I heard this, I thought it was fascinating. Alcohol is a dirty drug. You mentioned that term. And if you could go into that a little bit, that it's a depressant and a stimulant at the same time. And that's how it has that name, global or dirty drug. That is not a term I heard until your training. And I always share that with my clients now because I think that's so fascinating.
Well, what I mean by that is there's a reason certain people are drawn to certain things, and no one gets off the hook with this. No one's immune to it.
Yeah.
So for some people, alcohol is not their thing, but pornography is, or internet gaming addiction is, or sugar is, or overcompulsive exercise. We call it like exercise bulimia. So everybody has a thing. Maybe it's hoarding, and clutter, like where there's just kind of that shutdown of when life feels too much, too fast, too soon. How do we cope? By over exercising, by overeating, by over scrolling, by over drinking.
Just a distraction.
Exactly. And what was the question? Where was I going?
Dirty drug.
The dirty drug. Yeah. So there's a reason why some people are drawn to tobacco or cocaine or alcohol or exercise. And it correlates then with where their deficiency is and where their depletion is, which is not like a psychological judgment or a personality fault.
Right.
This is where the body whisperer comes in, and this is where I love this piece of figuring out like where do the dots connect. And so for people who are low in acetylcholine, that's more the neurotransmitter for focus. They're more drawn to nicotine and tobacco. People who are low in dopamine are drawn to like espresso and cocaine. People who are low in GABA are drawn to alcohol. And so that's why, it's always interesting, like where people's cravings are, kind of what their patterns are with stress. It tells me a lot metabolically, just with their whole physiological system, what's going on. But alcohol is a dirty drug, meaning it takes a swipe at all of the neurotransmitters.
Yes.
Whereas cocaine is more just dopamine, whereas cigarettes and tobacco are more just acetylcholine. But alcohol, like a bowling ball, knocks down all the pens, and which can make us more anxious, more depressed. We lose our focus, we lose our motivation. And so it's this rebuilding of all of those neural circuits and giving a boost to all of the neurochemicals.
Yeah, with these 7 categories in the Nourish technique. I love the last 2 were the most challenging for me, sitting in stillness and harnessing creativity. And stillness, I try to work on that now because we're not still in our society. It's always go, 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 or be on your phones constantly or on your iPad or multitasking. So that has been a challenge, and I try to work on and share that with my clients. But I also love your harness creativity, and you talk about the ING activities, and you put it in such a easy to understand, simplistic way, like the healthy ING and the not so good for you ING. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So the healthy ING is hobbies, and they're active. We're actively fishing, painting, drawing, knitting, gardening. There's the body's active, the
Yeah.
hands are active, that and it's like the runners, like they're active, they're moving, and they'll talk about being in the zone when they're running. So when people are knitting or gardening or out fly fishing,
Singing, dancing.
yeah,
Yeah, all
yep.
those.
There's an active component within the body, but it helps the mind find some stillness and
Mm-hmm.
slow down in that single focused kind of flow state. The negative INGs, drinking, drugging, overeating, overspending, over
Gambling.
shopping, right,
Yeah,
right,
over
over consuming things.
scrolling, all that kind of
Exactly.
stuff.
So we need an ING. We need that. And it's the leisure, it's the play, the fun.
Mm-hmm.
This is a vital nutrient that feeds our nervous system, that balances neurotransmitters. And if we don't intentionally, actively build that in,
Yeah.
find a hobby, do it regularly through the ebb, the flow, the up, the down in your life, having people around you, not having people around you, being able to go to that ING activity, it helps the nervous system step off the track of stress and worry and finances and kids and
Mm-hmm.
family, and have that downshift in more of a natural, intentional way. If we don't intentionally do that, that's where then the addictive
Yeah.
INGs come in: overeating, over drinking, over drugging. So it's that harnessing our creativity, that playtime, that downtime, that leisure. When we look at longevity studies, this is one of the components. Like, of course, vegetables, broccoli, moving your body are wonderful things. But these are the things that really move the needle for
Mm.
that quality of life, that longevity of life, anti-disease, not taking as many medications, but having that leisure piece in. And it goes hand in hand with being a remedy against not bringing in the addictive
Yeah.
INGs.
And you said that key word, it has to be intentional. Thinking of what you used to do that made you happy when you were younger, the playful things, the hobbies, it's intentional. And it takes a little bit of effort, but a big payoff. Whereas the unhealthy ING activities don't take that much intent. It's pretty easy to pop that cork, drink that drink. Now these days you can gamble very easily right on your phone. And those don't take a lot of intent or thought. And so it does take a little more energy to do these healthy things, but you have a much more longer lasting, obviously, and healthy benefit from it. And that's what we try to help people do and continue to do myself. So I love that. And your master coaching program, can you talk about that? How now you're sharing this and training other coaches like myself to do this?
Since 2018, I've been training by request. Other coaches were coming to me
Yeah.
after they were working with me as individuals, because they were self-identified gray area drinkers, stopped drinking, went through the one-on-one private coaching with me, and as nurses, therapists, health coaches, social workers, they were saying, I now want to share this with my clients, but I don't feel confident doing it
Mm-hmm.
because in my social work training, my health coach training, I didn't learn anything that you took me through.
Right.
So that's why I started training other coaches in 2018. And I just, the word needs to spread.
Yes.
So many professionals working from this physiology first perspective need to be educated, need to be trained to support their clients and patients. And if people are working with clients or patients one-on-one, they're working with gray area drinkers.
Right.
There's no way getting around it.
Right.
And so we need a more updated training model with working with the physiology and looking at this comprehensive approach. And we're co-piloting with our clients. It's a curiosity experiment of going back to the
Yes.
basics on, some things like hobbies. And it takes time because it's a trial by fire, because when you take something or do something or experience something, you run it through your nervous system, and the nervous system is either going to give a big red light and say, nope,
Right.
didn't like that, don't do that again, or it's going to be a green light saying, that felt amazing, where's that been all my life, I want to do that again tomorrow. And that's what we're looking for,
Right.
is those those matches for the nervous system. And it takes some time, but that's where the coaching comes in, of that partnership, that rapport, of having the physiological resources and the understanding of how certain things connect with certain physiology, and then being there with the client day in, day out, week in, week out, of repeating things and wiring them into the nervous system to create that new neuroplasticity.
Yeah, because we all have to experience things. We have to try it out in our body, and like you said, see if our nervous system resonates with that. I love how you say if it lights them up. If it lights them up, then we take that and we keep that resource and keep building the toolbox. So how do other coaches find you who are looking for this? I know for me, as a personal trainer, as a fitness person, I came out of another certification that was more behavioral and cognitive based, and I felt like something was missing. And because I'd always come from that background, as I started researching you and looking into you, it made so much sense to me. And it's kind of what I threw at myself when I stopped drinking. But I didn't really know, that I was doing what you say. And of course, yours is much more in depth, but it makes so much sense. So how do coaches find you if they want to learn about your gray area drinking coaching training?
GrayAreaDrinkers.com is my website, and the training page is there with all the details and information. And there's an application, and it's all the information about my programs, training, coaching, my TED Talk and podcast are there. And I'm most active on Instagram for social media, Jolene_Park on Instagram.
Yeah, so go look her up and check out her program. I can tell you that it's changed my coaching dramatically. And Jolene, I love to ask people this. What do you do in your own life to stay sober fit, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally? What do you do?
So barefoot walking on the beach is one of my favorite things. It's why I moved from Denver to Charleston 4 years ago. It's a little cold now in February, but I walk nonetheless. But barefoot walking when the weather permits. I love that, the grounding, being out at sunrise. I'm all about the circadian biology and that early morning light, and how that is so helpful for setting optimal neurotransmitter production. And so I'd say that's my favorite movement. I'm trying to get better about more kind of zone 2 cardio, more intense.
Right.
But yeah, I love the walking, and then some pretty active breath work is also a favorite of mine, where it's that kind of that hyperventilation, where it's the quick inhale, inhale, and then hold your breath for like 40 seconds or so, and exhale. And it's it really regulates and settles my system. There's times when I'm already too kind of activated to do that activating breath work, but lately it's been the activating breath work with just kind of leisure walking on the beach have been my two favorites.
Yeah, so you're knocking out two of those pieces of your acronym all at once: walking on the beach, getting outside, actually a couple of them, and doing your breath work. So she really lives it.
And that's what's fun. None of these things are islands. Yes. That often happens. You pick one and then you knock out two or three others, that they all start working synergistically together.
Yeah. So she truly lives it, guys. I can tell you that. And I want to thank you so much, Jolene, for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your wisdom about gray area drinking with everybody. And so go check her out, check out her website. And thanks again for being a guest, Jolene.
Thanks so much for having me.
Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label, and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI.